If this video appeared to you today, it's no coincidence. It's because your soul is ready to free itself from the invisible chains of fear. Nothing comes to us by accident. Every word, every silence, every awakening comes when we're ready to see what previously seemed hidden. Osho said, "Freedom frightens because it is the end of all certainties." And perhaps that's precisely why free spirits are always feared. Since the beginning of time, the world has feared those who don't follow the same rhythm as the crowd. The free spirit is one who walks without needing approval, who thinks for himself, who feels the call of truth even when it separates him from the comfort of the masses. He doesn't bow down, he doesn't pretend, he doesn't fit in. And that's why he inspires fear. Because freedom, when it's real, unmasks all the invisible prisons that sustain the world of appearances. Have you ever felt this? The feeling that your way of being bothers you, even when you're doing nothing but existing in peace. Have you ever noticed how some people distance themselves when you start to truly know yourself? It's because the free spirit is unpredictable, and the collective mind thrives on the predictable. Freedom cannot be controlled, and whatever cannot be controlled, the system tries to silence. There is something deeply spiritual about being free. It's not just about doing what you want, but be what it is without fear of judgment. The free spirit doesn't seek acceptance, it seeks to be true. And it is this living, pulsating, and untamed truth that causes discomfort in those still trapped in fear. When someone awakens, those still asleep feel threatened, because the awakening of one is the silent invitation for the awakening of many. Osho used to say that a truly free person is dangerous, not because they do harm, but because they are impossible to manipulate. They are not guided by guilt, nor imprisoned by the fear of rejection. They understand that solitude is not punishment, but a sacred space for expansion. And while most people rush to fit in, the free spirit allows themselves to stop, be silent, observe, breathe. Maybe deep down, that's why you've come this far. Because a part of you is tired of pretending, tired of pleasing others, tired of conforming to patterns that never fit your soul. There's something inside you crying out for space, for authenticity, for a return to your center. And even if the world doesn't understand, this call will never be silenced. Free spirits don't ask permission to exist. They simply exist, and this mere presence is enough to shatter the illusions of those who still believe in chains. When you are free, you become a mirror. And mirrors are disturbing, because they reflect what many try to hide, their own inner prison. But being a free spirit requires courage. Courage to be misunderstood, courage to walk alone, courage to continue when no one understands your path. Osho said that the true rebel is not the one who fights the world, but the one who transcends the world within themselves. The rebellion of the free spirit is not noisy, it is silent, profound, and transformative. And in this silence, something magical happens. The soul expands, fear begins to dissolve, and what once seemed like loneliness reveals itself as freedom. The free spirit understands that it doesn't need to convince anyone. Its mere presence is already a revolution. It's an energy that disarms, that deconstructs, that reveals. Perhaps that's why the world fears those who are free so much, because true freedom needs neither walls nor applause. It flows like the wind, light, untamable, unpredictable, and those who still live in cages of control feel naked before it. The free spirit is the living reminder that no one was born to live imprisoned, not by beliefs, not by fear, not by misunderstood love. If this video has resonated with you so far, perhaps your soul is remembering what it has always known, that freedom is the natural state of being, and that fear is just the echo of the bars we once believed we needed. So take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this silent presence within you, this quiet force that needs no proof. This voice that doesn't shout, but whispers, you are already free. And as long as the world continues trying to control what it doesn't understand, you will keep walking light, conscious, awake. Because the free spirit is not one who runs away from the world, but one who passes through it without losing oneself. Stay with me, because what comes next will show you why the fear of others is actually the mirror of your power. If everything I've said so far has touched some part of you, that silent part, tired of hiding, then write here in the comments, I choose to be free. These 4 words are more than a phrase, they're a commitment to your own truth. When you declare this, something inside you begins to shift. It's as if you're saying to the universe, I'm ready to live without masks, without fear, without constraints. And if this content resonated with you, if at any point it brought clarity, peace, or that real chill, leave your like. It seems like a small thing, but that's how the message travels, how more people are reached, how more souls awaken. And if you feel like this kind of content speaks to your soul, subscribe to the channel. Here you'll find profound reflections, healing words, and liberating ideas, all inspired by the insights of masters like Osho and translated for your journey of self-discovery. It's not about religion or doctrine, it's about presence, about the art of living awake in a world that tries to lull you to sleep every day. Maybe you've probably felt it. The more authentic you become, the more the world seems to start looking at you with suspicion. When you start speaking your soul's truth, acting according to what you truly believe, something changes around you. People who once felt close to you start to distance themselves, conversations become more awkward, looks grow colder. Suddenly, you realize that freedom comes at a price, the price of being misunderstood. And it's at this point that many give up being who they are, just to remain accepted. But those who have tasted freedom can no longer go back to living in chains. Osho said that a free person is dangerous because they cannot be controlled. And that's exactly what the system, society, and even those closest to them fear most. Someone who doesn't bend, who doesn't fit in, who doesn't depend on others' approval to exist. Spiritual freedom isn't something achieved externally, it's an internal state. And when you begin to live it, the world feels it. Your energy changes, your silence disturbs, your presence reveals. Because the free spirit carries a vibration that exposes all the lies disguised as normality. The world loves obedience. It loves those who follow rules, who adapt, who don't question. Obedience provides security, it provides predictability, and the free spirit is the exact opposite of this. It is movement, it is mystery, it is uncertainty. It lives guided by an invisible compass, conscience. And this is frightening because the collective unconscious needs molds. It needs people who do what everyone else does, who think what everyone else thinks, who feel what they're allowed to feel. Anyone who breaks this mold becomes a threat. And this is how the free spirit comes to be seen, a threat to comfort, to the illusion of control, to the collective lie. Have you ever noticed how simply saying no can completely change the way people treat you? When you stop reacting, when you stop justifying yourself, when you simply stand calmly, something happens. It's as if the world, accustomed to seeing you available and submissive, no longer knows how to deal with it, because a free spirit doesn't need to explain their silence, doesn't need to justify their choices. They act from a center of clarity, and this disconcerting to those who still live according to external expectations. Being free means living in peace, even when the world tries to provoke you. It means remaining whole, even when everything around you tries to fragment you. But this requires courage. Courage to let go of the role of pleasing. Courage to be rejected by those who still don't understand what it means to truly live. Courage to face your own fear and no longer let it guide your life. And this is a solitary but profoundly sacred process, because while everyone else rushes to fit in, the free spirit walks inward. Society fears the conscious individual because they don't need imposed rules. They are guided by their own inner wisdom. They don't blindly follow leaders. They don't sell themselves short for approval. They don't bow to pressure. They are living proof that it's possible to exist fully without needing to belong to any rigid structure. Osho said that the true revolutionary is not the one who fights against the system, but the one who transcends the system within themselves. And this is the greatest power a human being can have, the freedom to think, to feel, to be. Perhaps you've experienced this silently, that feeling of becoming increasingly awake in a world that seems asleep. You observe the superficial conversations, the repetitive dramas, the automatic judgments, and feel like you no longer belong there. And at the same time, a part of you feels fear, because being free also means losing what once made you feel safe. It's a symbolic death, the death of the character, of the disguise, of the stories you told to be accepted. And every death, even the spiritual one, hurts. But this pain is the beginning of liberation. The free spirit is not against anyone. It simply chooses to no longer be part of the lie. It refuses to live by appearances. It knows it is better to walk alone in truth than accompanied by illusion. And little by little, it realizes that true companionship comes from within. When the mind quiets, and consciousness expands. It is in this silence that power is born. The power to be whole, the power to be real, the power to exist without depending on anyone's approval. Being free is a silent revolution. It's breaking invisible chains, one by one, until none remain. Chains made of guilt, fear, attachment, and the need for recognition. The free spirit doesn't seek to be different, it seeks to be true, and it's this living, uncontrollable truth that the world fears. Because every awakening threatens the balance of the system that's built on fear and submission. Perhaps you're at that point now, feeling the discomfort of expansion, the strangeness of no longer fitting into old versions of yourself. This is a sign of growth. As consciousness expands, the old begins to crumble, and everything that doesn't vibrate at the same frequency begins to move away. Don't fight it. Freedom has its own rhythm, and it always leads to the essential. If these words touched something in you, if you felt that this truth echoes within your silence, write the phrase here in the comments. My soul does not bend. This is your assertion of power, your reminder that you were born to live awake, and that the fear of the world will never be greater than the strength of your freedom. Being free isn't rebellion, it's awareness, and this is precisely where so many get confused. Spiritual freedom isn't a denial of the world, but a new way of being in it. Without becoming a prisoner of the expectations, pressures, and masks the world insists on imposing. Osho said that true freedom arises when you are no longer afraid of being alone. And there is profound beauty in this conscious solitude, because it isn't the absence of company, it's the presence of self. It's when you finally stop seeking approval and begin to live in alignment with what's real within you. Throughout our lives, we've been conditioned to believe that being free is selfish, that thinking differently is dangerous, that choosing one's own path is a form of abandonment. This guilt is what keeps people trapped. Society thrives on guilt because a guilty person is easy to control. A free spirit, on the other hand, lives without guilt, and that's what makes them impossible to dominate. They understand that taking care of themselves, setting boundaries, saying no, and following their own pace isn't a lack of love. It's the purest form of respect. How many times have you felt bad for not meeting others' expectations, for choosing silence instead of arguing, for deciding to walk away from someone who only knows how to drain your energy? And how many times has this guilt made you backtrack, trying to justify yourself, trying to explain what didn't even need explaining? Osho said that the guilty mind is never free, because guilt is an invisible chain that binds us to the past, to the ancient voices that still whisper, you can't, you shouldn't, you need to please. And this is how many lose touch with their own center, trying to be what the world wants, and forgetting who they truly are. Awareness, however, brings a kind of light that dissolves guilt. When you begin to observe your own mind, you realize that guilt doesn't come from the soul. It comes from conditioning. It comes from centuries of fear, control, religions, and systems that taught that freedom is a sin. But Osho reminded us, there is no sin in conscious freedom. There is only maturity. Freedom is the highest stage of love, because those who are free do not hurt, do not manipulate, and do not need to dominate. The free spirit simply exists, and its presence is a silent invitation for others to awaken as well. Being free is understanding that it's not necessary to escape the world, just not to be possessed by it. It's not necessary to abandon everything, just to stop identifying with what isn't you. The free spirit lives in the same world as everyone else, but with a different perception. It sees illusions but isn't trapped by them. It participates but isn't lost. It loves but isn't attached. It's this awareness that liberates. And curiously, this is what many call rebellion. But there's no rebellion in being true, there's only authenticity. Osho said that the greatest prison is not the physical one, but the fear of being who you are. And that's what imprisons most people. The fear of displeasing, the fear of disappointing, the fear of being rejected. The free spirit looks this fear in the face and transcends it. They understand that fear is merely an echo of the past, a shadow that dissolves when illuminated by awareness. They don't seek to be loved by everyone, because they already love themselves enough not to need it. They don't seek recognition because they recognize within themselves what is eternal. Perhaps at some point, you've felt this guilt for wanting to be free. The guilt of choosing your own peace, the guilt of not fitting in, the guilt of being different. But the truth is, You didn't come into this world to be just another one. You came to be a unique expression of consciousness, a singular note in the melody of the universe. When you understand this, the weight of guilt transforms into lightness. You stop apologizing for existing and begin to celebrate the simple fact of being. Spiritual freedom is a process of unlearning. You unlearn to blame yourself, unlearn to justify yourself, unlearn to diminish yourself. It's like removing layers of dust that have been placed on your essence until the original radiance reappears. A free spirit isn't someone who fights the system. It's someone who no longer needs it to define themselves. They live simply, act consciously, and walk in peace even if the world judges them for it. There's something profoundly powerful about living without explaining yourself. When you stop trying to convince, you begin to be understood by those who truly vibrate on the same frequency. Truth needs no defense. It simply is. And it's this silent presence, this quiet force, that the world fears because it cannot be manipulated. And perhaps this is where you find yourself now, between guilt and freedom, between fear and truth, between the past that binds you and the future that calls you. It's a delicate space, but also sacred. It's at this transitional point that awakening begins, and all you need to do is observe, breathe, and allow, because freedom is not achieved by force, but by awareness. Osho said that a free man is one who acts from being, not from obligation. He does not rebel against the world, but simply transcends it. And this is the true meaning of spiritual life: to be in the world without being of the world, to live love without being a slave to attachment, and to express the truth without fear of consequences. From now on, every time you feel guilt trying to pull you back, remember that it's just a reflection of the old you trying to survive. The new consciousness doesn't need this pain. The new consciousness is light, silent, and deeply alive. If you felt this message in any way, if it brought relief or clarity, leave the phrase in the comments, "I choose my freedom." Write this down and affirm it as an inner vow, a reminder that from this day forward, you will never again apologize for being who you truly are. When you awaken, those still asleep feel panic. This explains why spiritual freedom is so disturbing. It's like a light turned on in a room where everyone still prefers darkness. And the brightness of this light isn't an affront. It's simply the natural presence of truth. Osho said that the conditioned person needs everyone to remain asleep so they don't need to wake up. This phrase reveals one of the deepest secrets of the human mind: resistance to awakening. People fear consciousness because it shatters the illusions they've hidden behind their entire lives. And when someone becomes conscious, the mere fact of existing in this new vibration threatens the entire system of beliefs and lies others uphold. The system fears those who cannot be manipulated, because free beings don't play along. They don't allow themselves to be guided by imposed narratives. They don't react to emotional blackmail. They don't cling to obligations that distance them from their own essence. They live guided by an inner strength that doesn't depend on external rewards. And what can't be controlled is automatically seen as dangerous. Therefore, from an early age, people are taught to fit in. School molds, religion limits, family directs, and society completes the cycle, offering a ready-made script for those who want to live right. The free spirit, however, breaks this script. They question, observe, and gradually realize that right is only what serves control. Fear is the most powerful tool of manipulation. The system has learned that simply creating fear and guilt is enough to keep people obedient. Fear of making mistakes, fear of being rejected, fear of not belonging, fear of being different. Most live within these invisible walls, believing they are safe, when in fact they are imprisoned. The free spirit sees these bars and silently begins to let go. They understand that it is not possible to be truly spiritual while living in fear. Osho said that freedom is the perfume of consciousness, and consciousness only blossoms when fear disappears. People trapped in fear attack the mirror of courage. This is inevitable. When someone begins to live authentically, those who haven't yet had the courage to do the same feel provoked. It's as if the mere presence of a free spirit reminds everyone of what they themselves chose not to experience. The free spirit awakens in people a mixture of fascination and anger, because it reflects each person's forgotten potential. The problem is that looking at this requires facing one's own fear, and few are ready to do so. This is why so many prefer to criticize, reject, or try to extinguish the light of those who dare to be different. But the free spirit doesn't react. He understands that the resistance of others is merely fear in disguise, and he knows that this fear doesn't belong to him. He observes, understands, and follows. This is the difference between the conditioned and the awakened. The former fights to defend his prisons, the latter dissolves the chains through the simple presence of awareness. Society has built a structure based on control of behavior, emotions, morals, and even thought. Anything that challenges this control is treated as a threat, and the free spirit is the greatest of them all because it doesn't need external authority to live. It is guided by a kind of silent wisdom that comes from within. It doesn't believe out of fear, but out of clarity. It doesn't obey out of obligation, but out of love. It doesn't need rules because it lives in natural harmony with life. This is the point the system will never understand. True freedom doesn't generate chaos, it generates consciousness. When someone awakens, everything around them begins to reveal itself. The forced conversations, the relationships based on dependency, the emotional games, all of this loses its meaning. And that's when discomfort arises. Because living awake means seeing, and seeing requires courage. Most prefer to close their eyes and continue pretending not to see. But the free spirit can no longer deceive itself. It can no longer go back to sleep, because consciousness, once ignited, never goes out again. This inner light frightens those still in the shadows, because the presence of the awakened effortlessly reveals everything the other tries to hide. This is why spiritual freedom is often lonely. The free spirit walks lightly, but carries the weight of lucidity in a world that still feeds on unconsciousness. Even so, it carries on, because there is something within it that no longer allows it to live half-heartedly. Osho said that when a person awakens, they become part of not an external revolution, but a silent one. They change the structure of their own mind, and this change begins to resonate in everything around them. Awakening is contagious, and this is what the system fears. One conscious being inspires others to free themselves, and when many awaken, control loses its power. Therefore, each free spirit is a spark that threatens the empire of unconsciousness, and perhaps, without realizing it, you've already become that spark. Perhaps you've felt the discomfort of realizing how conditioned everything is, how people repeat patterns without question, how fear still dictates the world's choices. This discomfort isn't weakness, it's the first sign of awakening. When the soul begins to see, the old disintegrates. And this process can be painful, but it's also liberating. The free spirit doesn't need to convince anyone, because it knows that everyone awakens in their own time. Its mission isn't to change the world, just to be truthful. And being truthful is enough to change everything. Consciousness is a living force. It doesn't need speeches, just presence. And when this presence becomes constant, everything begins to align naturally. What many call chaos is just life rearranging what no longer matches its new vibration. So, if everything around you seems to be changing, don't resist. The old must dissolve so the new can be born. Osho said that a butterfly never returns to a caterpillar because the transformation is irreversible. So too is the awakening of the soul. The system fears those who cannot be manipulated because manipulation only works on those who do not yet know themselves. A free spirit is one who has found themselves, and a being who has found themselves can no longer be controlled because they have found something beyond any external power. This is the true spiritual revolution, not the one that happens in the streets, but the one that happens within silence. If you feel that this awakening is happening within you, if you realize that something within you no longer accepts living asleep, write the following phrase in the comments: I choose to awaken. This is your affirmation of conscience, the reminder that from now on, the fear of others will never be greater than your own light. For the next 24 hours, practice free silence, not as one who runs away, but as one who observes. Don't defend yourself, don't explain yourself, don't try to convince anyone. Just remain present, aware, and at peace. This is the first exercise of true spiritual freedom, observing the world without getting lost in it. Osho said that silence is the purest language of existence, and it is in it that you discover who you truly are. Therefore, try simply being without reacting, without justifying yourself, without rushing to put out fires that were not caused by you. This is the test that separates the conditioned from the conscious. The conditioned person constantly needs to explain themselves. They're constantly trying to justify themselves, begging to be understood, fighting for acceptance. The free spirit, however, understands that the need to defend themselves is a prison. When you feel like you constantly need to prove something, it means you're still trapped in the approval of others, and it's at this point that your energy begins to drain. Your mind becomes agitated, your body tense, your heart restless, all because you still believe you need to protect yourself from other people's judgment. Free silence is not the absence of speech, it is total presence. It is an internal state in which you observe everything clearly, without being swept away by the emotions of others. It's like watching a movie knowing you no longer need to be involved. And curiously, it is in this space of silence that power begins to manifest, because those who master their own silence master their own energy field. Osho said that those who do not react govern. When you stop reacting, control leaves the other's hands and returns to you. During this exercise, observe the behavior of those around you. Notice how some will try to provoke reactions, how others will use guilt to pull you back into old patterns. They'll ask subtle questions, make passive-aggressive comments, or create situations that force you to justify yourself. And this is where you must practice the art of conscious silence. Breathe, observe, don't give in. You'll realize that the discomfort isn't in you, it's in the other person. It's the other person's fear trying to drag you back into the old dance of emotional manipulation. This practice is powerful because it dismantles the entire control system. Silence exposes the manipulator, the controller, the needy person disguised as caring. When you stop reacting, the game is over. People lose the power they once had over you, not because you fight, but because you simply no longer enter the game. Osho said that the mind needs resistance to exist. If you don't react, it dissolves, and when the other person's mind tries to provoke you and finds only the serene mirror of your presence, it collapses. But this exercise requires inner discipline. The impulse to defend yourself is automatic, coming from the ego, from the need to be right. Your mind will whisper to you, respond, don't let it slide, show me you're right. And that's when you must remember, to react is to surrender control. To remain silent is to regain it. Free silence is an act of spiritual power. It isn't passivity, it's sovereignty. It's proof that you don't need to win any external war because you've already won the internal one. Over the next few hours, take this test. Notice how many times a day you feel the urge to explain yourself. Notice the small situations, a message you don't want to reply to, a comment that provokes you, a conversation where you feel the need to justify yourself. And instead of reacting, just observe. Take a deep breath. Let the silence act for you. You'll realize that most situations don't require a response, just presence. Osho said that when you become a witness, everything changes, and this practice is exactly that, becoming a witness to your own inner world. When you observe yourself, your energy changes direction. Instead of being drawn outward, it returns inward. It is at this moment that power returns to its center. The free spirit understands that each reaction is a thread of energy given to another. Therefore, it reacts less and less, and vibrates higher and higher. Perhaps throughout this exercise, you'll notice the discomfort of silence. It will challenge you. It will make you feel vulnerable. But this vulnerability is the gateway to consciousness. It's through it that you transcend the fear of not being understood, the fear of losing control, the fear of appearing distant. In truth, you're not distant. You're finally present. Present to yourself, present to your truth. And when you begin to practice free silence, something subtle happens. People vibrating at the frequency of control move away, and those vibrating at the same consciousness move closer. It's as if the energy performs a natural sorting process. Suddenly conversations shift, relationships transform, the space around you purifies, all because you chose to stop reacting. The external world is a reflection of your internal state, and when your internal state changes, the reflection changes too. This is the alchemy of silence. It transmutes, cleanses, and reorganizes everything. And the more you practice, the more you realize how much energy you wasted trying to control the uncontrollable. True freedom arises when you no longer need to react to everything. When others try to blame you and you just smile. When they try to pressure you and you just breathe. When chaos happens and instead of entering it, you observe as if you understand that everything is impermanent. Osho said that silence is the bridge between the human and the divine. And that's why the world fears silence. because it reveals what words hide. When you become silent, masks fall, intentions emerge, and the truth becomes visible. From that point on, no one can deceive you anymore, because silence is your protection. It doesn't need to defend itself because it is untouchable. So for the next 24 hours, practice free silence. Don't run away from situations, but don't react to them either. Just be. See what changes when you stop justifying yourself. See who tries to provoke you, who tries to trap you back into old roles. And also see how your energy begins to stabilize, how your mind calms, how your heart returns to the natural rhythm of life. If at the end of this exercise you feel that something inside you has expanded, if you have noticed the lightness that comes when the world no longer controls you, write the phrase here in the comments. I choose to be free. This is your anchor, the reminder that true power lies not in reacting, but in remaining whole in silence. Freedom is not bitter loneliness. It is love without possession. And perhaps this is the most misunderstood aspect of the spiritual journey. When someone begins to free themselves, the world, accustomed to dependent relationships, often labels this movement as coldness. They say you've isolated yourself, that you've become distant, that the love within you has cooled. But the free spirit knows the exact opposite is true. They continue to love, and in fact love more than ever, because the love born of freedom is the only true love. It is the love that does not demand, does not bind, does not measure, does not charge. Osho said that compassion is the fragrance of freedom, and this phrase carries immense power, because it reveals that true liberation is not separation from the world, but the purest form of presence. Freedom isn't about running away from people, it's about not being possessed by them. A free spirit can be surrounded by people and still remain whole. They don't lose themselves in anyone, nor do they wait for someone to complete them. And this isn't arrogance, it's spiritual maturity. It's the understanding that love and attachment are different things. Attachment wants to control, it wants to hold on, it wants to ensure the other person stays. True love only wants what's best for them, even if the other person leaves. A free spirit understands that each soul has its own time, and that nothing needs to be forced for love to exist. But this kind of love is rare, because fear still governs most relationships. People confuse presence with possession, care with control. They believe that love is about watching, demanding reciprocity, and guaranteeing something in return. And when they find someone who doesn't play this game, they're frightened. The free spirit doesn't allow itself to be captured. It is present while love is alive, but it doesn't tie itself to what has already served its purpose. It experiences love with intensity and detachment because it knows that freedom is the only way to love without destroying the other. Osho said that a truly conscious person is one who can be alone without loneliness and accompanied without loss. This is balance. Most people only feel alive in the presence of others, and when they are alone, they feel empty. The free spirit learned to fill this void with his own awareness. He discovered that solitude, when understood, is the fertile ground for love, because only those who are at peace with themselves can love without needing. Only those who are whole can share, instead of seeking to complete themselves. And that's why the love of a free spirit is silent, serene, and undemanding. It doesn't need to be displayed, validated, or reciprocated in the expected way. It exists on its own, like a natural energy that flows and expands. When a free spirit loves, it doesn't imprison, it liberates. It wants to see the other grow, blossom, and discover themselves. It doesn't want the other to depend on it. It wants the other to awaken as well. Osho said that love is like the wind. When we try to hold it back, it dies. When we let it flow, it touches everything around it. Many mistake this attitude for indifference, but it's the opposite. The free spirit feels deeply but doesn't identify with the feeling. They are able to delve into pain without becoming the pain, to feel love without being blinded by it. This is the wisdom of conscious detachment. True love isn't the kind that promises eternity, but the kind that is true while it lasts. The free spirit experiences each encounter as a gift, not a contract, and that's what makes them so fulfilling, because they aren't at war with the flow of life. Freedom and compassion go hand in hand. Freedom without compassion can become isolation, and compassion without freedom can turn into dependence. Balance is at the core. Osho said that mature love is born when freedom meets consciousness. It is when a human being stops loving out of need and begins to love out of overflowing. And this overflowing is what the free spirit experiences. They love because it is their nature to love, not because they need something in return. This kind of love changes everything. It changes the way you relate to others, to the world, and to yourself. You begin to understand that you don't need to hold anyone back to feel safe. Security doesn't come from control. It comes from awareness. You stop asking for promises because you understand that life is movement. You stop demanding presence because you understand that true love isn't measured in time, but in quality. And suddenly, relationships become lighter, truer, more alive. But this lightness is frightening. People accustomed to drama, attachment, and toxic intensity don't know how to handle calm. They confuse peace with disinterest. The free spirit, however, knows that calm is the height of love. They don't need to shout to be heard. They don't need to suffer to prove it. They live with tenderness and depth without the weight of possession, and it is this serenity that makes them so different and therefore so misunderstood. The free spirit loves expansively. It isn't limited to romantic love. It loves life, silence, the wind, and the moment. It finds beauty even in parting, because it understands that everything that comes also goes. Osho said that when you truly love, there is no pain in loss. There is gratitude for the experience. And this is the love that arises from consciousness, the love that doesn't hurt, doesn't hold back, doesn't demand. To be free is to love without fear. It's to look at the other and say, I love you enough not to hold you back. It's to understand that love isn't a gilded prison. It's an open space where two conscious beings choose to walk side by side, not out of necessity, but out of affinity. And it's precisely this kind of love that the world fears, because it can't be controlled. It doesn't need rules, it doesn't need contracts, it doesn't need guarantees. It simply is. When you begin to live this way, people may call you distant, cold, detached. But within you lies a peace no one can understand, the peace of someone who loves freely. This is the essence of compassion, allowing the other to be who they are, without trying to mold them into your image. To love is to allow. To love is to free. To love is to understand that no one belongs to anyone else, and that the truest love is the one that leaves room for the other to breathe. Osho said that the free spirit is the heart of the universe because it loves all that is alive and demands nothing in return. It understands that life is a flow and that love is the natural movement of existence. When you reach this state, everything around you changes. Relationships become more conscious, bonds more real, and the weight of the past disappears. You begin to relate not from fear, but from trust, not to protect yourself, but to share yourself. If this message touched something inside you, if it reminded you that love doesn't need chains to exist, write the phrase in the comments, I choose to love in freedom. This is your affirmation of conscience, the reminder that compassion is the true perfume of the awakened soul. If you've made it this far, it's because something within you has already begun to awaken. Few people listen to the end. And those who stay aren't just watching a video, they're answering a call. You're not here by chance. The freedom you feel now is the beginning of something greater, and the world needs precisely this energy, people who are awakened, aware, and willing to live their truth without fear. When you are free, the fear others feel is only a reflection of the prison they still carry. So keep going. Walk lightly but firmly. Your awakening inspires others to awaken as well. Your presence changes environments, transforms relationships, and raises the vibration around you. The world tries to mold you, but the free spirit doesn't fit. It expands. And if you're feeling this right now, if these words resonated with you, I want to invite you to join our community of free consciences. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me. Here, each video is a deeper step on this path of self-knowledge, silence, and inner power. Each reflection is a mirror that helps you see what has always been within you. And if this video touched you in any way, leave your like. Not as an automatic gesture, but as a way of saying to the universe, this message reminded me of who I am. Your like helps this energy reach more people who, like you, are ready to awaken. Now, the journey continues. The next video is appearing on the screen. Watch it in sequence. It's the next natural step on this journey, the moment when silence ceases to be emptiness and becomes strength. Go for it, because your process of liberation has just begun.